Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're diving into the famous and honestly deceptively simple trolley problem. It sounds like a story about a runaway train, right? But it's actually a fascinating mirror reflecting the totally chaotic wiring of human morality. Let's just jump right in and set the scene. Imagine a runaway train, completely out of control. Up ahead, 5 people are trapped on the tracks. You can't stop the train, but you are standing right next to a lever. Now, if you pull that lever, the train switches to a second track. But of course, there's a catch. Unfortunately, there is one person standing on that second track. I want you to really put yourself in that position for a second. You're standing at the switch, the metal is cold in your hand, the sound of the train is getting deafening. You literally have to choose between doing nothing and hitting 5 people, or deliberately pulling a lever to hit one. So, do you pull it? So the crucial point is, at first glance, this actually feels like a pretty easy decision for most of us. Pulling a lever means one person dies instead of 5. From a purely mathematical, cold numbers perspective, it's kind of a no-brainer. 5 lives saved just seems infinitely better than losing one. It's basic utilitarian logic, maximize the good, minimize the bad. But as you probably guessed, philosophy rarely stops after the very first question. Part 1, the real-life factor. Let's talk about actually facing the emergency. Because it's really easy to do the math in a theoretical vacuum, but imagine actually standing there in real life. The ground is literally shaking, the noise is deafening, and sheer panic sets in. A lot of people believe they'd confidently pull that switch, but human biology tells a very different story. In a real emergency, we often just freeze. Our brains aren't just detached calculators, they're complex survival organs. And sometimes our survival instinct means locking up completely, just to process the overwhelming reality unfolding right in front of us. Okay, let's dive into this next part and make things a bit stranger. Part 2, the bridge variation. Forget the lever entirely for a second. Now you're standing on a bridge high above the tracks. Down below, those same 5 people are still trapped. But this time, you're standing next to a very large person. And if you push them off the bridge, their body will stop the train, saving the 5. I wanted to actually challenge you here. Would you push them? You have to physically shove someone to their demise. The math hasn't changed at all. It's still sacrificing one life to save 5. And yet, most people instantly answer no. It's almost a visceral reaction, right? When we're confronted with this scenario, we just recoil. The identical math of 5 versus 1 suddenly feels completely different emotionally. We go from confidently pulling a lever to being absolutely horrified by the idea of pushing someone. But why is that? Why on earth does the exact same numerical outcome cause such a drastically different emotional response? And this brilliantly illustrates exactly why. Because now you're directly causing someone's death, instead of simply redirecting an existing danger. Your brain treats those two physical actions very, very differently. Think about another variation where the large person is already on a sidetrack and you just pull a switch to route the train to them. People actually feel way more comfortable at that. Why? Because they're just redirecting a runaway train rather than creating a brand new physical danger with their own 2 hands. Which brings us to part 3, unpredictable risks, or the derailment scenario. Let's go back to the original switch, but this time, let's add a massive risk. If you pull it, the train will completely derail and crash into a residential backyard where a totally innocent person is just relaxing. So would you still pull it? I mean, you're still saving the 5 on the track, and only one person in the yard is in danger. But now, you are unleashing a derailed, out-of-control disaster. Are you willing to act when things get this messy? Probably not. And honestly, that makes total sense. Even though the core math, saving 5 at the cost of 1, really hasn't changed much, the risks have changed entirely. An out-of-control train introduces the very real possibility of hurting even more people. When the situation becomes far less predictable, our willingness to play God and pull that lever drops to almost 0. Now let's leave the train tracks entirely. Part 4, the hospital organ dilemma. Imagine a hospital with 5 desperate patients who will absolutely die today without organ transplants. Meanwhile, a perfectly healthy visitor walks into the lobby for a routine checkup. Here is the question that pushes our logic to its absolute terrifying limit. Should the doctor secretly harvest that healthy visitor's organs to save the 5 dying patients? Think about it. The math is exactly the same as the first lever scenario. If 5 is always better than 1, shouldn't the doctor just do it? Almost everyone says, absolutely, unequivocally, no way. It is an overwhelming, near-universal rejection of this gruesome arithmetic. People who gladly pulled the lever in the first scenario are completely horrified by this hospital scenario. So if the math is identical, what on earth is causing us to completely reject the outcome here?
Well, the reason isn't arithmetic at all. It's fairness. That healthy person in the hospital didn't volunteer. They weren't already in danger on a train track. They just walked into a building they trusted. Taking their life to save 5 others completely violates the foundational trust that makes hospitals, and quite frankly, human society as a whole, actually function. It just isn't fair.
Which leads us to our final section, Part 5, what it really reveals.
Now, what's really interesting about this is how clearly we can map out our moral journey. With the lever, our comfort zone was purely about math and outcomes. But moving to the bridge introduced direct responsibility, and poof, our comfort vanished. The derailment introduced predictable risk, freezing our action. And finally, the hospital brought in fairness and trust, which completely overrode the math. We changed the variables, and our moral compass just spun wildly out of control. Because here is the secret. The trolley problem isn't actually testing your math skills. It's testing how your brain separates these 4 things: accidents, responsibility, fairness, and intention. Sure, sometimes we care deeply about the outcomes, but often we care far more about how those outcomes happen. And that is exactly why people can universally agree that saving 5 lives sounds vastly better than saving 1, yet they will vehemently disagree on the method used to actually do it. Which brings us to this incredibly powerful takeaway from our source material. The trolley problem isn't designed to tell you what's right. It's designed to reveal how you think. There may never be a single answer to any of these scenarios that satisfies everyone. And honestly, that is exactly the point. It holds up a mirror to the complex, sometimes contradictory, and deeply emotional ways we navigate right and wrong.
So, if exploring all of these shifting tracks and hospital beds has left your brain feeling a bit like a runaway train today, well, that's the beauty of looking under the hood of your own moral compass. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. I want to leave you with one final thought. The next time you have to make a tough, real-world decision, are you truly just doing the math, or are you just trying to keep your hands clean? Think about it, and I'll see you next time.